The sun was still below the Afghan ridgelines when the sound of mortar fire shattered the quiet. Staff Sergeant Claire Donovan pressed her cheek to the dry earth, her hands instinctively gripping the M2010 enhanced sniper rifle like it was a lifeline. The first round had landed barely 50 yards behind her position, spraying rocks across the shallow depression she and her spotter had dug into overnight. "Jesus, they're awake early," muttered Sergeant Ray Cruz, her spotter, flattening himself beside her. His dark eyes scanned the horizon, trying to pick out muzzle flashes in the gray half-light. "You pick up where they're hitting from?" Claire exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the edge of her scope. She could already feel her heartbeat sink to the rifle stock, that old rhythm that told her nerves had no business interfering. Panic got soldiers killed. The second round whistled in. This one landed even closer, a plume of dirt and dust rising like a fist trying to swat them from the ground. "They've dialed us in." Cruz's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white on the binoculars. "They think they have." Claire adjusted the scope, panning across the jagged rocks a mile away. Her eyes narrowed. There, an almost imperceptible shift of shadow, a faint glint of metal. She caught it, that little betrayal of a mortar tube catching the first light of dawn. "Grid 317 by 562, she whispered. Cruz raised his rangefinder, squinting. "Got it. 1.2 miles. You're calling it?" Claire didn't answer. She slid the bolt back, chambering around. The world tunneled until all that existed was her rifle, the scope, and the speck of movement she knew was a man aiming to kill her squad before breakfast. The third mortar shell shrieked into the sky. Claire fired. The recoil was a familiar kick, sharp but steady. Her eyes stayed glued to the glass. The shot was fast, brutal, no time for second chances. She saw the figure collapse backward, arms flailing. The mortar shell veered midair, then exploded harmlessly 100 yards off target. Cruz let out a low whistle. Before he could drop another shell, "Damn, Donovan. That's one way to say good morning." But Claire didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She pulled back from the rifle, feeling her throat tighten. She'd killed before, this wasn't her first trigger squeeze, not by a long shot, but there was something different about snatching a man from existence mid-motion, silencing him before he could even complete the act. "More will be coming," she muttered, forcing her tone flat, professional. "They don't set up a mortar nest alone." "Yeah." Cruz adjusted his headset, calling in the coordinates to command. "We're about to be very popular out here." By the time the squad regrouped at Base Eagle, Claire's kill had already become gossip. Soldiers she barely knew gave her nods of respect as she passed. Someone muttered, "That's the sniper chick," with a mix of awe and doubt. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it. She stripped her rifle down on the bench outside the barracks, methodically cleaning every piece. For her, the ritual wasn't just about maintenance, it was about order, control. In a war zone where randomness could shred lives in seconds, the rifle was the one thing she could completely trust. Cruz sat nearby, sipping a bottle of water. "You know they're all talking about you, right? 1.2 miles with wind that nasty? That's the kind of shot they put in training manuals." Claire glanced at him. "They're talking about me because they don't think I should be here." Cruz raised an eyebrow. "Because you're a woman," she finished for him, clicking the bolt back into place. "Don't sugarcoat it, Cruz. You've heard it. I've heard it. Hell, half the guys in this unit think I'm lucky when I pull a trigger instead of skilled." Cruz shrugged. "Then keep proving them wrong. Works every time." But Claire knew it wasn't that simple. No matter how many perfect shots she made, there was always that lingering doubt in the air, like cigarette smoke that never fully cleared. Still, she didn't have time to dwell. The next mission came before dusk. The squad moved out in 2 MRAPs, bouncing along the dirt roads that wound through the arid valleys. Claire sat near the gunner's seat, her rifle cradled across her lap. Captain Ward briefed them over the comms, his gravelly voice steady as a metronome. "Intel says insurgents regrouped after this morning's mortar team got cut down. They're fortifying in a village about 5 clicks northeast. Our job is recon and containment, sniper overwatch. Donovan, Cruz, you'll set up on high ground while Alpha Team sweeps the valley floor." Cruz gave Claire a little grin. "Our favorite pastime, camping with a view." "Hope you packed marshmallows," she shot back dryly. The humor was thin, but it kept the tension from boiling over. As they reached the ridge overlooking the village, Claire's stomach tightened. The place looked almost peaceful, mud brick houses clustered like sleeping animals, smoke rising from cooking fires. But she knew better. She'd learned long ago that war disguised itself in normality. A boy playing in the dust might run messages for fighters. A rooftop that looked abandoned could hide a rifle barrel. She set up her rifle on the ridge, the bipod sinking into the soil. Cruz unfolded his spotting scope beside her. Movement on the east side, he said quietly. Claire adjusted. Through her scope, she saw a man carrying what looked like sacks of grain. But the way he moved, stiff, deliberate, was wrong. Her gut prickled. She zoomed in. The sack bulged in unnatural ways. Her pulse quickened. Not grain, she whispered. That's ordnance. Damn. Cruz radioed it in. We've got confirmation, possible IED placement. Permission to engage, Claire said into her MIC. A pause crackled back. Then Captain Ward, engage. She steadied her breath. The man stopped near a roadside, crouching to dig. Claire squeezed. The shot echoed off the rocks, and the figure dropped. The sack spilled open, revealing the dull metallic cylinders of homemade bombs. Good kill, Cruz murmured. But down in the village, chaos erupted. Women screamed. Children scattered. Men rushed from doorways, some armed, some not. Ward's voice barked over comms, Alpha Team, move in. Donovan, suppress hostile shooters. Claire's scope swept across the rooftops. She caught the flash of a muzzle. She fired. Another. Fire. Reload. Her rifle cracked like thunder, each shot a question answered. She felt herself slipping into that strange zone where her mind split, half focused on ballistics, math, wind, angles, half haunted by faces falling in her scope. Cruz called out ranges, corrections, targets. They worked like a machine, every word efficient, every second critical. But then. Sniper. West roof. Cruz yelled, ducking as a round cracked into the dirt beside them. Claire pivoted, spotting the glint. The enemy sniper was already adjusting for a second shot. Her blood surged cold. Got him, she whispered. The duel lasted only 3 breaths. She steadied, calculated, fired. The man dropped. Cruz exhaled, shaky. That one was close. Claire didn't answer. She couldn't. Her hands trembled faintly as adrenaline fought with exhaustion. Hours later, after Alpha secured the village and confiscated weapons caches, the squad regrouped. Captain Ward studied Claire for a long moment before speaking. Good work today, Sergeant. You kept half this squad alive. Just doing my job, sir, she said. But Ward wasn't fooled. He saw the tightness around her eyes, the weight she carried. That night, lying on her cot in the barracks, Claire stared at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces. The mortar man frozen mid-drop. The villager with the IED. The sniper who nearly got her. She turned on her side, gripping her dog tags until they cut into her palm. Everyone doubted her skills. Everyone thought she didn't belong. But what haunted her wasn't their doubt. It was the creeping question in her own mind. How many more faces would she have to erase before she proved herself? And would proving herself ever be enough? The order came down at dawn. Claire sat cross-legged on an ammo crate, sipping bitter instant coffee that tasted more like rust than beans, when Captain Ward walked into the tent. His face was as unreadable as ever, carved into those stern lines that said he'd seen too much and wasn't impressed by anything anymore. Mission, he said simply, dropping a folder onto the makeshift table. The squad gathered, Cruz with his ever-present smirk, Private Jansen still rubbing sleep from his eyes, and Corporal Miles, who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Claire leaned forward, already bracing herself. Ward's finger tapped the map spread inside the folder. Insurgents are shifting through the Karangal Valley. Reports say a high-value target is moving weapons from Pakistan across the mountains, using the villages here as safe houses. Intelligence suggests he's the one coordinating the recent mortar strikes. Name? Claire asked. Ward hesitated. They call him Shazaman. The ghost. Cruz chuckled softly. Ghosts don't bleed. Ward's eyes cut to him like knives. This one has left over 60 American dead across 3 provinces. He bleeds. The problem is, no one's ever had a clean shot at him. And just like that, all eyes drifted toward Claire. 2 hours later, the MRAP rumbled through the jagged valley roads, suspension groaning as rocks clattered beneath the tires. The air smelled of dust and smoke, always smoke. Claire sat in the back with her rifle across her lap, double-checking her gear like a nervous tick. Cruz nudged her with his elbow. Relax. You'll get your shot. Or I won't, she muttered. That's the point of a ghost. Hey, you already pulled off a 1.2-mile shot yesterday. Maybe tomorrow you'll hit a guy through 3 mountains just to keep your reputation. She rolled her eyes but couldn't help the faint twitch of a smile. Cruz had that effect. He was good at cutting tension without undercutting the seriousness. That was why he was the best spotter she could ask for. Focus, Ward said from the front. His voice didn't rise, but it cut through the banter like barbed wire. If intel's right, we'll be threading a needle in hostile territory. Donovan, if you get eyes on Shizumin, you don't hesitate. Understood. Understood, sir, Claire said, though her chest tightened. They set up on a ridge overlooking a cluster of mud brick homes tucked into the valley's bend. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys. Goats grazed nearby. On the surface, it looked like any other village. But Claire had learned to see the shadows underneath. She positioned her rifle, scope sweeping across rooftops, alleys, doorways. Every movement told a story. A boy ran across the street, barefoot, chasing a ragged soccer ball. A woman carried water in a clay jug. But then she noticed something else. 3 men standing near a house, rifles slung casually at their sides, pretending to be locals but with the stiff posture of fighters. Armed men, northwest corner, she whispered. CM, Cruz confirmed. Hours passed. Sweat trickled down Claire's back despite the cool mountain wind. War wasn't just bullets and explosions, it was waiting. Endless waiting. Then, just before dusk, Cruz stiffened. Vehicle inbound. Pickup truck, East Road. Claire shifted her scope. A dust cloud trailed behind a battered Toyota, its bed loaded with tarps covering something bulky. Weapons, almost certainly. The truck slowed, stopping near the guarded house. The passenger door opened. Claire's breath caught. The man who stepped out was tall, bearded, his movements commanding. The fighters around him straightened instantly, like wires pulled taut. He carried himself with the calm of someone untouchable. Got him, Cruz whispered. That's Shizumin. Claire's crosshairs hovered over his chest. Just a squeeze of the trigger and it would all be over, the ghost made flesh, the specter that haunted patrol routes and ambush reports reduced to another casualty. Her finger curled. But then, a child ran from the house, a girl no older than 7, darting straight into his arms. Zumin knelt, scooping her up, kissing her hair. He laughed, a sound so normal, so human, it jarred against the legend. Claire froze. The shot was clean. Perfect. But the image through her scope wasn't a faceless insurgent, it was a father holding his daughter. Take it, Cruz urged. He's right there, Claire. Do it. Her breath stuttered. The crosshairs trembled. Negative, she whispered, pulling back from the scope. Cruz's head snapped toward her. Negative? Are you kidding me? That's the ghost. He's using her as a shield, she said sharply, more to convince herself than him. If I fire, I risk hitting the kid. I'm not doing it. Over comms, Ward's voice came low, controlled. What's the hold-up? Claire swallowed hard. Target obstructed, sir. Civilian presence. A long silence. Then Ward's voice, colder, maintain overwatch. Cruz cursed under his breath, slamming a fist lightly into the dirt. Zumin disappeared inside the house with the girl, the door closing behind him. And just like that, the chance was gone. Night fell heavy over the valley. The squad pulled back, concealed in the darkness, but the air between Claire and Cruz was thick. You had him, Cruz hissed once they were alone by the gear. You had him dead to rights. And I had a little girl in the scope too, she snapped back. I'm not putting a round through her just to make the intel guys happy. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Cruz? That I should have gambled the kid's life on my trigger squeeze. His jaw clenched. I'm saying the ghost will kill a hell of a lot more kids if we let him keep breathing. The words stung because they were true. Claire turned away, staring into the darkness beyond the ridge. She wanted to scream. Instead, she muttered, I made the call. Live with it. Cruz sighed, frustration bleeding into weariness. You better hope Command sees it the same way. They didn't. The next morning, Captain Ward's face was thunder. You had a clean shot, he said in front of the squad. His voice wasn't raised, but the weight of disappointment was heavier than shouting. Instead, you let him walk away. Claire bristled. Sir, there was a child. I don't care if he was juggling babies while singing lullabies. That man is directly responsible for dozens of our brothers and sisters coming home in body bags. You had one job. The squad stared at the floor. No one spoke. Ward finally leaned in, eyes drilling into hers. You'd better pray the next time we find him, he doesn't get the first shot instead of you. The following days were brutal. Patrols through narrow valleys, ambushes sprung from ridgelines, IEDs buried in roads. It felt like the ghost was taunting them, always one step ahead. One night, their convoy was hit by a roadside bomb. The blast tore through the lead vehicle, flipping it on its side. Flames lit the night sky. Screams filled the comms. Claire's squad scrambled to return fire as insurgents poured down from the slopes. Bullets cracked overhead, tracer rounds streaking through the dark. Contact left. Contact left. Miles shouted. Claire dropped prone, rifle braced. She picked targets in the chaos, one insurgent with an RPG, another firing from behind a boulder. Each shot was precise, deliberate, her breathing steady even as her heart raced. But nothing could stop the smell of burning fuel, or the sight of Private Jansen dragging a wounded comrade from the wreckage with blood soaking his sleeves. By the time the firefight ended, 2 Americans were dead. Ward's words echoed in her skull, "You had one job." Later, in the silence after, Cruz found her sitting alone by the wrecked vehicle, rifle resting across her knees. "You blaming yourself?" he asked softly. "Shouldn't I?" she said bitterly. "If I'd taken the shot, maybe this doesn't happen. Or maybe you hit the kid and the whole valley turns against us overnight. You don't know, Claire. None of us know." She looked at him, searching for some anchor. "Then how the hell do we live with it?" He gave a tired smile. "Same way we live with everything else out here. One round at a time." But that night, as Claire lay staring at the canvas ceiling of her tent, she knew one thing for certain. The ghost was still out there. And sooner or later, she would face him again. This time, she couldn't afford to hesitate. Not even for a child. That there's a way a sniper learns to listen to the earth. It's not the loud noises, the blasts, the cries, the bark of rifles, but the small sounds, the whisper of wind through a scrub, the tiny stones nudging each other when a boot shifts, the far-off bleat of a goat that punctuates silence like a metronome. You learn the rhythm of a place, and then you know when something is wrong. Claire Donovan had listened in valleys and deserts, on ridgelines and roofs. The Karangal sang a new song now, one of traps and ghosts. After the convoy ambush, command decided to stop reacting. Ward's face, weathered and hard, had told them the same thing in a curt briefing: find the ghost, end his network, or be ground down until nothing was left. It was a simple sentence that carried a dozen consequences. "You'll work with Recon elements," Ward told Claire in private, the map's edges creased under his fingers. "We can pull intelligence from locals, but there's also Sigint picking up chatter around a route he uses near the northern ridgeline. We want eyes on him before he can exfiltrate. That means you and Cruz, high overwatch, and a direct action team to move in. We run it clean, no collateral." He looked at her like he was trying to weigh something he couldn't measure. "You up for running point on that overwatch?" Claire had breathed in so many different orders that morning she barely registered the question. "Yes, sir," she said. The words were a flat comfort. Saying yes was the easy part. Living with it came later. They planned like surgeons. The assault team would push in at 0400, using terrain masked by pre-dawn shadow. Claire and Cruz would be at a concealed position 1,000 meters away on a spine of rock with a clear line of sight down to the suspected compounds and intervening choke points. The job: call targets, take high-value shooters, and help direct the assault through laser designation and suppression fire. If they spotted Zuman, they would have authority to engage. The caveat: if civilians were present, they would capture, not kill, a directive Ward had enforced after the previous misstep. "Capture," Claire repeated, and the word felt heavy. There were prisoners and there was justice, but in this valley, the two were often the same as bargaining chips. Still, she'd promised to obey the chain of command. That promise snapped tight in her chest like wire. The night before the op, Claire and Cruz crawled the actual ground. Recon had already identified 3 potential staging areas: Old Shepherd's Hides, shallow caves, a rock overhang that looked like a crown from a distance. They chose the rock crown for view and cover. Claire set up the shooting platform, feeling out the angles like a jeweler setting a stone. Her rifle, cleaned and tuned after the last round of firefights, fit against her cheek like an old friend. Cruz ran the ballistic tables: temperature, humidity, a wind she could feel but not see, mirage point 300 meters downrange. "You've got a crosswind picking up around 600 meters, he said. "Variable gusts from the northeast. If Zuman opens a door and steps out, he may be moving across that wind drift. I've got your holdovers plotted." He tapped the scope's reticle map with an ink-stained finger. "If we need him and his exposed, you've got 3 windows: right now, 20 seconds after he moves, or when he crosses the shadow line on the southeast wall. Anything else is a guess. Claire listened and imagined the geometry. Sniping was math, patience, and temperament. The math she could do. The patience she had in spades. Temperament, that was the thing she worried about. After the mortar man and the child, after the convoy fire, every decision felt like it came with a ledger. Her mind couldn't stop tallying. "You nervous?" Cruz asked, folding the scope and passing her a thermos of coffee that tasted better than it had any right to. "Always," she admitted. The word was a small defiant laugh. "But calculated nervous." "That's the good kind," he said. "Keeps you from getting theatrical." She smiled, the sound small and brittle. Cruz always had a way of scattering her dark thoughts into manageable pieces. He'd been with her long enough to know when to talk and when to be quiet. They both slept in shifts, their rifles close. The assault team moved at 0400. Claire tracked them through her spotting scope, boots, armored plates glinting, a flameless weapon in hand, the way professional soldiers carried themselves when the whole world was about to be torn open. They slipped into the valley, masked by smoke canisters and a feint on the eastern road. Then the deliberate, silent violence began. A door blew. Glass and dust exploded into the morning. Men ran. Some fled with hands up, faces showing the immediate surprise of men who assumed the world would always let them be. Others returned fire. It was when the first shots flew that Claire found herself thinking of the child again, not to weaken her, but to anchor decisions in something other than a file of duty. "Contact on the west compound," Cruz whispered. "2 shooters on the roof." She locked on. The 2 men adjusted, scanning, perhaps for flight. Once they moved into a ditch and exposed their necks, she fired. 2 shots, clean and precise. They folded. Claire didn't exult. She watched, coldly methodical, as the assault team moved in. But running toward the center of the village, the element of absolute certainty began to waver. Zuman wasn't found inside the first house. He wasn't in the second. The assault team called for a sweep. Men were detained, old, young, and those who had once carried rifles but now blinked in confusion at the sunlight. It felt like sewing a wound with too few stitches. And then, through her scope, Claire saw movement along the northern ridge. A figure, not running, but walking with a purpose. He wore an old coat, and a scarf wrapped around his face. Cruz's breath hitched. "That's him," Cruz said, almost wholly. Claire's heart clenched. There he was, moving with the arrogance of a man who believed himself invisible. He moved down a trail toward a scrubby outcrop that would put him 2 clicks from the assault team's perimeter and within the field of a planted IED they'd been trying to locate. If he reached that spot, they could lose the team, and the valley would return to wherever ghosts nest. She steadied, calmed her breathing, and took a reading. Wind, mirage, trajectory. The variables fell into place like fate. Through the crosshairs, he was a speck that left the world if she pressed her finger. She thought of Ward's disappointed eyes, of the burning MIP's twisted metal, of the name Shazaman stitched into 100 reports and funerals. She thought of the little girl, and the way Zuman had kissed her hair. Everything that had ever made the calculus messy narrowed to a single fact. Inaction sometimes killed more than action. She whispered, "Hold." Cruz's reply was only a tensioned hum in her ear. "We have a window in 20. He's crossing a shadow line. He'll either step into open or into cover." Claire's finger itched over the trigger. She didn't shoot. Instead, she radioed Ward, "Target sighted. Approaching a high-value point, possible IED emplacement. Request permission to engage." The pause that followed was a physical thing. Static, wind, the faraway shouts of men searching houses. Ward's voice came at last, slow and cold. "Negative, Donovan. Capture if feasible. We're moving to take him alive. Maintain overwatch and, static, wait for the cordon to close. Do not engage unless he becomes an immediate threat." Her throat tightened. Capture. Of all the orders she'd been given, this one forced her to become something she was not, a jailer's auxiliary, a collector of living things whose hands still smelled of gun oil. If she was honest with herself, she'd wanted the clean certainty of removing a threat. Capture felt like inviting another kind of chaos. The figure turned, heading down the trail, the scarf slipping enough that she could see the flash of recognition across his jaw, a younger man than she imagined, tired in a way that didn't fit the story. He paused, scanning the valley. He reached into his coat. Claire's breath hitched in warning. Cruz hissed, "He's grabbing something." "Could be a phone," she said sharply. "Could be a detonator." The cordon's movement lagged fractionally, Sometimes these operations needed a single moment for geometry to be perfect. The man bent, and then, in a motion too quick to think, he pulled out a small radio and pressed it to his mouth. His voice was muffled. Claire watched his body for signs of an explosive. The sun burned through the ridge shadow line and the man stepped into the light. For a sliver of time, his silhouette cut clean against the dust. If she fired now, the bullet would track true. If she didn't, he might signal an attack. "Do it," Cruz whispered, his voice broken. "Do it, Claire." She squeezed. The shot left like a thought. The bullet struck his forearm, hard and decisive. He didn't fall, no clean death, but the impact made him drop the radio. He howled, a human sound that made Claire's stomach twist. He clutched at his arm, spinning to run, and 2 assault team members closed in like wolves. They took him down without killing him. He screamed, and then he went still under a pair of heavy boots. Someone cuffed him, someone else yanked off the scarf. Up close, Zuman's face was streaked with dust and blood, and he looked no older than some of the soldiers who'd called Claire Kid back home. Ward's voice came through, taut but not angry. "Donovan, you engaged to disable and prevent detonation. Good shoot. Hold position. We're extracting the detainee." Claire's hands shook, not with adrenaline, but with a hollowing out feeling that comes when you make a choice and it lands exactly where you aimed. The team closed the perimeter, cleared an area, and loaded Zuman onto a low sled. He moaned, eyes wide and alive in a way that made Claire think of funerals yet to be attended. They brought him to the makeshift command post. Men who had been shouting orders and barking names were quiet, like a crowd inside a cathedral. Ward looked at Claire for a long moment before turning to watch the medics. "You did right," he said at last. "You followed orders and you kept the team safe." There was something in his voice, relief, perhaps, or the complex gratitude of a leader who knew the cost of victory. "We'll get him onto the chopper. Intel will want a debrief. Expect questions. Expect praise. Expect paperwork." Claire wanted nothing of that and everything simultaneously. She'd broken her own rule, she'd made the call she'd promised to avoid, and the outcome was an ugly, necessary tangle. Zuman lived. So did the rest of them. That was the ledger balancing itself into an odd equilibrium. But when they put Zuman on the chopper and watched it disappear into a sky already burning with heat, a piece of the valley's quietness seemed to hollow out. The men they detained in the sweep looked at Claire with a mix of hatred, fear, and something she couldn't name. The child, if she still lived with a neighbor or had been moved, was nowhere to be seen. There would be investigations, interrogations, possible reprisals. That night, a reporter's question hovered in the mess tent like an insect. What do you do when the enemy is human? Claire couldn't formulate an answer that satisfied more than one person. Cruz found her on the ridge they'd used for Overwatch. The valley spread below them like a map dotted with truths and lies. He crouched beside her, and for the first time, neither pretended there was a clever quip coming. "You did what you had to," he said quietly. "Did I?" she asked, the word small. "I hit his arm. I didn't take him out. We captured him. For now." Her eyes tracked the dark line of the road he'd taken. What if he's a puppet and cutting his arm doesn't stop the hand that pulls strings? "We'll find the strings," Cruz said, uncertainly. "Interrogation, intel. We did what we could." She nodded, though the knot in her chest didn't loosen. She wanted the certainty of a finished story, a clean end to the ghost. Instead they'd bought a temporary reprieve and a pile of questions. As they packed up to return to base, Claire checked her rifle once more, fingers running over familiar metal. There was a tiny nick on the stock where a grit of rock had scarred during the firefight. It was the kind of small, useless imperfection that seemed symbolic in the wrong sort of way. She breathed out. Somewhere in the valley, lights flickered in windows, people returning to cooking, to children stirring in sleep, to men who might take another route home to avoid the dead center of operations. The ghost had been caught, but the valley still had teeth. In the darkness on the drive back, somewhere between exhaustion and the hum of engines, someone in the vehicle laughed softly at a joke. It was a brittle sound that contained gratitude and grief and the odd relief that hands still worked and people still spoke. Claire closed her eyes for a moment and let herself be rocked by it. At the forward operating base, the debriefs would come. The analysts would draw lines, place dots on maps, string together names. They would call her a hero in one report and a liability in another. She would be awarded commendations and dragged over red tape at the same time. That was how it worked. But as she lay in her bunk that night, the ceiling a dim echo of canvas and poles, something in her remained unsettled. Zuman had been real and human, he had a daughter, he had a radio and a way to set the world aflame. Captured or not, a man like that always mattered more than just one bullet. She rolled onto her side and stared at the little seam of light where canvas met night. There was a hole in the valley where the ghost used to be. They had filled it with a man in cuffs and 100 questions. Claire knew one truth, hard and shallow as stone: the war didn't end by catching ghosts. It copied, it shifted, it adapted. Outside, a dog barked once in the dark. In the morning, they would brief, interrogate, and file reports. There would be celebrations and whispers. People would clap shoulders and say things that felt generous even when the heart was hollow. For now, she let the hum of the bass knock her toward sleep, thinking of the little girl's face she'd seen through the scope days ago. A picture that wouldn't leave her. A reminder that the clean lines of rules and orders were always smudged by flesh and blood. And somewhere on a far ridge, another figure watched the sky and asked the same question Claire had asked herself a dozen times since the first mortar round had landed. When you pull the trigger, what do you leave behind? The answer, if it existed, waited on the edge of the next operation, a truth that would either settle the valley's long counting or open another ledger entirely. The desert wind was screaming. Not the kind that whispered over dunes, but the kind that clawed at your face like shards of broken glass. Dust spun in vortexes across the barren expanse, burning the eyes, choking the lungs. And in the middle of it all, Sergeant Rebecca Reb Callahan lay prone, cheek welded to the stock of her rifle, breathing slow. Her heart should have been pounding, she was staring down chaos, but it wasn't. Her pulse had steadied into a rhythm, one she had trained for, one she had owned. 2 miles out, a ridge lit up with flashes of muzzle fire. The insurgents had taken the high ground. A convoy had stumbled into an ambush, pinned down, boxed in. Over the radio, clipped voices shouted coordinates, fear hidden behind military jargon. Soldiers were bleeding out there. They needed her. "Reb, we've got friendly stuck in the kill zone," Captain Hayes' voice barked in her earpiece. "We can't move armor in until you thin them out." "Copy," Reb whispered, her voice calm enough to sound surreal. "Talk me onto targets." But Hayes didn't need to talk her onto anything. Through the shimmering mirage, she already saw them, dark outlines moving against the stone ridge, figures popping in and out. She shifted, controlled her breathing. Every ounce of her being tunneled through that glass scope. The first trigger squeeze broke like a whispered secret. A rifleman crumpled backward, his weapon clattering against rock. His partner flinched, froze, then caught the second round in his chest. Silence didn't exist here, the roar of gunfire and shouts echoed across the valley. But in Reb's mind, it was quiet. One target at a time. One decision at a time. 2 down, she muttered. "Good hit," Hayes came back. "Keep going," convoys boxed. But there was no time for praise. Reb adjusted, scanning for the machine gunner hammering down onto their Humvee. She measured the wind, gusting east, 30 knots, and adjusted 2 clicks. The target was moving, but not fast enough. She squeezed. The round snapped across distance and found its mark. The machine gun fell silent. For a moment, the battlefield exhaled. But the insurgents weren't amateurs. They adapted fast, spreading, moving to flank the convoy. And worse, Reb spotted them setting up mortar tubes. "Hayes," she hissed into comms. "They're prepping indirect fire. Give me 30 seconds. "Callahan, you've got 20, Hayes said, tension stretching his words. "We lose a Humvee, we lose everyone inside." Reb knew it wasn't possible. Not really. Mortar crews weren't like lone shooters, they were a unit, spread, moving. But impossibility wasn't a language she spoke. She calculated angles, read their body positions. She exhaled, adjusted, and in the time it took the desert wind to whip past her ear, she broke 3 shots. First loader, down. Spotter, down. Gunner, fell backward. The remaining crew scrambled, abandoning the tube before it could be fired. "Mortars neutralized," Reb said. Static buzzed before Hayes' voice broke through, a mix of disbelief and relief. "Outstanding. Armor moving in now. Hold position." But her scope caught something else. A flicker of movement not with the others. Higher up, almost camouflaged by the rocks. A man crouched low, not shooting. Watching. Even from this distance, she felt the weight of his gaze. He wasn't a grunt. He was a shooter. And he was watching her. The hair on the back of her neck prickled. "Hayes," she whispered, "we've got counter-sniper eyes. He's painting me." "Do you have him?" Hayes asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she adjusted her rifle. But the shooter was good. He wasn't exposing himself long enough to give her a shot. Her heartbeat, steady all through the firefight, ticked up a notch. She'd taken plenty of risks, but going up against another sniper was different. It wasn't math anymore. It was chess, and the board was blood. The convoy rumbled forward as armor pushed through, machine guns spitting in arcs of protection. Soldiers were pulling wounded from the kill zone. For them, the fight was survival. For her, the fight had narrowed down to one unseen figure on a ridge. Minutes dragged. Then she saw it, the faintest flash of glass in the sun. His scope. He was patient, but not perfect. She inhaled. And waited. He exhaled. Too fast. The tell. She squeezed. Her shot kissed stone, inches from his face. He ducked, fast as a shadow. The duel had begun. For the next half hour, Rep traded positions. Crawl 2 meters. Set scope. Search. Nothing. Crawl again. Every grain of sand dug into her elbows, every muscle screamed. The desert sun punished. But she couldn't relent. Somewhere out there, a man was playing the same game, hunting her. Finally, Hayes' voice cut in again. Convoy clear. We're exfiltrating. Callahan, pull back. Negative, Reb said softly, never lifting her cheek from the scope. He's still up there. Reb. If I move now, he'll follow. And the next time, it won't be me in his crosshairs. It'll be one of ours. There was silence, then a curse. Hayes knew she was right. You've got 10 minutes. Then we drag you out. The desert grew unnaturally quiet. Reb slowed her breathing again. She could feel him. Somewhere, 100 yards of rock and dust away, another sniper was trying to think like her. And she smiled faintly, even as sweat stung her eyes. Come on, she whispered. Show me what you've got. The flash came sudden, his shot cracked, stone exploding inches from her shoulder. He'd missed. Barely. She didn't move. That was the trap. He wanted her to shift, to reveal her new line. She forced herself to stillness, to patience. Her lungs ached, her muscles burned, but she didn't flinch. And then, there. A fraction of his silhouette against the rock, adjusting ever so slightly. Her finger tightened. The round screamed across the valley and caught him center mass. He fell without a sound. Relief didn't hit her. Just silence. She pulled her cheek from the stock, closed her eyes for half a breath, then keyed the MIC. Counter-sniper down. Exfil route. Cheers erupted faintly over comms, then Hayes' gruff reply, sending a bird. Sit tight. Reb rolled onto her back, staring at the burning sky. Dust still stung. Her lips cracked dry. The convoy was safe. Her team was alive. But the image of that sniper stayed burned into her thoughts. He hadn't been local. His stance, his glass, his patience, it wasn't militia work. It was trained. Professional. Which meant someone, somewhere, had just sent their best against her. And failed. But if they sent one, they'd send more. Later, at FOB Falcon. The base buzzed with after-action chatter, hums rolling in battered, medics rushing stretchers to triage. Reb sat in the shade of a blast wall, canteen in hand, watching her rifle rest across her knees. Hayes crouched beside her. You did more than pull weight today, he said. You saved them. All of them. Reb nodded slightly. Praise wasn't what she wanted. Who was he, sir? Hayes frowned. The sniper? Yeah. We don't know yet. Intel will dig. Could have been mercenary. Could have been foreign trained. Doesn't matter now. It matters, Reb said, eyes narrowing. Because if they trained one like him, they'll have more. And they'll know my name. Hayes studied her, then finally sighed. Then I guess they'll learn why your name scares them. That night, Reb cleaned her rifle in silence. Every swipe of the cloth, every click of the bolt, was ritual. Soldiers laughed in the mess hall nearby, their voices rising with relief. But in her barracks corner, she thought only of one thing, the duel she'd won. And the war it had promised. For every action, there was a counter. For every shot, another lined up. And for Sergeant Rebecca Callahan, the battlefield was no longer just desert and dust. It was the shadow of unseen eyes watching her through their own glass. She closed her eyes, laid the rifle down gently, and whispered into the empty room. Your move. The Black Hawk's rotors hammered the night sky, chopping air so violently it felt like the world itself was tearing apart. Below, the city sprawled, a jagged mass of concrete, broken windows, and alleys twisted like veins. Baghdad at midnight was a furnace of shadows, glowing here and there with the angry pulse of fire. Sergeant Rebecca Reb Callahan sat wedged against the fuselage, rifle across her lap, helmet chinstrap digging into her jaw. She hated cities. Out in the desert, she had distance, vision, air to breathe. Here, every window was a threat, every dark alley a rifle barrel waiting. "Cheer up, Reb," Specialist Devers shouted over the engine roar, grinning with his wide farmboy face. "It's just another day in paradise." "Paradise doesn't smell like burning garbage," Reb shot back without looking. The squad chuckled, tension bleeding off in nervous humor. But Captain Hayes' voice cut sharp through comms. "Lock it in. Mission starts the second boots hit concrete. Intel says high-value target is holed up 3 blocks from drop zone. We go in fast, we go in quiet. Callahan, eyes up. Rooftops are yours." Reb nodded, already scanning the skyline even from the chopper door. The rooftops looked like jagged teeth in the dark. Perfect places for shooters. Perfect places for someone like her. Drop zone. The Black Hawk flared, kicking dust and trash into a whirlwind. The squad poured out, boots crunching broken glass, weapons raised. Reb's rifle wasn't for close alleys, but she carried her sidearm holstered and a shorter M4 strapped across her back. She wasn't just a sniper tonight, she was a soldier, and the city demanded it. They moved. Shadows swallowed them, boots splashing through stagnant water in potholes. Reb's eyes flicked up constantly, every rooftop, every flicker of movement, every curtain shifting. Her instinct screamed. 2 blocks in, Sergeant Morales raised a fist, halting the column. Ahead, the street narrowed into a corridor of collapsed walls and burnt-out cars. The perfect kill zone. "Eyes sharp," Hayes whispered into comms. Reb scanned, heart slowing into sniper calm. And then she saw it, a faint shimmer, like glass catching moonlight. A scope. Contact. "Rooftop, 1 o'clock, she hissed. Gunfire erupted before the words even left her lips. Traces carved the street into sparks and screams. The squad dove behind cover, bullets chewing concrete. "Sniper!" Morales barked, dragging a wounded private behind a rusted car. Rep didn't think. She dropped prone, rifle snapping up. Through her glass, she found him, a shooter tucked behind a crumbling ledge, methodical. Too methodical. He wasn't militia. He was trained. Her stomach turned. Another one. She exhaled, aimed between the flashes, and squeezed. The enemy sniper slumped, his rifle clattering. The street quieted into the ringing silence that follows violence. "Sniper neutralized," Rep said, though her hands trembled. Hayes' voice crackled, "Move. Double time. We lose the window, we lose the target." The building. They reached the safe house, if safe was the right word. The building leaned like a drunk, concrete scarred from 100 firefights. Inside, the stench of mold and rot hit like a fist. Devers muttered, "Smells like my grandma's cellar, minus the goats." Rep smirked despite herself. "You're not helping." The squad moved room to room, clearing with precision. Shouts, doors kicked, boots pounding stairs. Rep stayed rear, rifle ready, eyes never leaving the upper floors. Then, gunfire, close. A room ahead exploded in shouts. Hayes' voice barked over comms, "Target secured. Package in hand. Exfil now." But the sound of engines outside cut through his order. "Rebels. Reinforcements." "Captain," Reb said sharply, peering through a cracked window, "we've got a problem. Technicals inbound. At least 3 trucks, mounted guns." "Damn it," Hayes cursed. "We hold here. Callahan, rooftop, now." Rooftop. Reb bounded up the stairs 2 at a time, lungs burning. She burst onto the roof, the night wind slamming her face. Below, headlights flared. 3 pickup trucks roared into the street, heavy guns bristling. She dropped prone, rifle snapping to her shoulder. First shot, driver, down. Truck swerved, slammed into a wall. Second shot, gunner, thrown backward in sparks. But the other 2 trucks kept coming, gunner spitting lead upward. Bullets chewed the rooftop, spraying stone chips across her face. She rolled, cursed, lined up again. Another gunner fell, body tumbling like a rag doll. But there were too many. For every one she dropped, another poured from alleyways, AKs barking. "Hayes, they're swarming," Rep panted. "Hold them, Callahan. Birds inbound in 5. 5 minutes. A lifetime." The push. Below, her squad returned fire from windows, the building echoing with ricochets. Reb's world narrowed to scope and breath. Shoot, roll, reload. Shoot, roll, reload. Her shoulder bruised, her cheek raw. Then, movement on a distant rooftop. She shifted, zoomed. Another sniper. No, two. Her chest clenched. This wasn't random. Someone had set this up. Multiple shooters high, she warned, voice low and tight. She fired, dropped one. The second ducked, vanishing. She rolled, scanning frantically. Where? Where? Crack. A round smashed inches from her head. She flattened, teeth grinding. This one was good. Too good. Her mind raced. If she traded shots, odds were 50-50. Not good enough. She needed misdirection. She ripped a chunk of concrete loose, propped her helmet on it, and slid it just over the ledge. A second later, crack. The helmet exploded in shards. Got you, she thought. She peeked opposite, found him shifting for follow-up. Too late. Her round punched through his chest. He toppled backward into shadow. Her lungs finally exhaled. Extraction. Engines thundered overhead, the Black Hawk, finally. A rope slapped down into the chaos. Move! Move! Hayes bellowed. The squad surged up, hauling the bound prisoner. Reb fired cover, rounds cracking until her magazine clicked empty. She slung her rifle, grabbed the rope, and climbed. Bullets zipped past, hot metal singing. The Black Hawk rose, city shrinking below, rebels firing wildly from the street. Reb dangled in the air, heart pounding, not from fear, but from realization. This wasn't random. The ambush. The multiple snipers. The precision. Someone was orchestrating it. And all of it had been aimed at them. At her. Back at base. The squad stumbled off the bird, sweat-soaked, ash-streaked, laughing that nervous laugh soldiers share when they're alive against odds. Devers clapped Reb on the back. Hell of a night, sharpshooter. You dropped more bad guys than I can count. Reb forced a grin. But inside, unease chewed. Hayes walked up, face grave. We got the target, he said. Intel says is connected to foreign training cells. Real money, real weapons. He paused. And they knew we were coming. Reb's jaw tightened. So someone tipped them. Or someone's hunting us, Hayes said quietly. He studied her, then added, and they know about you. The burden. That night, Reb sat alone in the army, rifle across her lap. Her hands moved automatically, cleaning, oiling, checking. But her mind replayed the night, snipers on rooftops, gunners in streets, the perfect ambush. Someone out there wasn't just fighting the US Army. They were fighting her. Watching her. Testing her. She thought of the sniper she'd killed in the desert. The one who had almost outplayed her. Maybe he hadn't been alone. Maybe he'd been the first piece on a larger board. She whispered to the empty room, the same words as before, but heavier now, edged with dread. Your move. The war room at FOB Falcon smelled of burnt coffee, sweat, and dust, like every other place where decisions meant life or death. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright for eyes that had stared through scopes all night. Sergeant Rebecca Reb Callahan sat at the edge of the table, gear stripped down but her rifle leaned against the wall within arm's reach. Her squad filled the seats around her, Morales with his arms crossed, Devers slouched like a barn cat, Hayes standing at the head of the table with a scowl etched deep. The projector whined to life, throwing a grainy satellite map across the wall. A cluster of red dots glowed like a rash along a jagged mountain range. All right, Hayes began, voice heavy. Intel from last night's target confirms what some of us suspected. These ambushes aren't random. They're being orchestrated from this region. He tapped the map, fingers circling a valley marked by those red scars. Shah Dara. Remote, fortified. Intel says foreign trainers are embedded with insurgent units here. Rep's stomach knotted. Foreign trainers. That explained the sniper she dueled in the desert, the rooftop ambushes in the city. These weren't militiamen with cheap rifles. These were professionals, soldiers, mercenaries, ghosts from other wars. Hayes' gaze swept the room. Our orders are simple. Go in, locate the training camp, dismantle it. High-value targets will be on site. But there's a complication. He clicked, changing slides. A face appeared on the wall. Male. Sharp features, cold eyes. Code name, Viper. Former Spetsnaz. Confirmed sniper instructor. He's been building cells out here for 2 years. Hayes paused, then added, Intel says he knows who you are, Callahan. The room went silent. Every pair of eyes flicked toward her. Reb's mouth was dry, but her voice stayed level. He was watching me. Devers broke the tension with a nervous chuckle. Well, congrats, Reb. You've got a fan club. No one laughed. Into the mountains. The insertion was before dawn, when the sky was still steel blue and the mountains loomed like jagged teeth waiting to swallow them. The squad hiked light, rifles, packs, radios, rations. Every step up the narrow trail felt like climbing into the mouth of something alive. Reb trailed the column, eyes always scanning ridgelines. The mountains were sniper country, cover, concealment, angles everywhere. A place where one mistake was a death sentence. Morales whispered as they moved, feels like we're walking into his backyard. Reb whispered back, we are. The air thinned as they climbed, breaths frosting in the cold. Silence hung heavy, broken only by boots crunching gravel. Then, a crack echoed, rifle fire, distant but deliberate. The squad dropped to cover instantly, dust scattering. Contact. Hayes hissed into comms. But no follow-up shots came. Reb raised her scope, scanning the ridge. Nothing but rocks and shadows. It's not suppression fire, she muttered. It's a message. One round. One echo. A hunter's way of saying I see you. The village. Hours later, they stumbled upon a mountain village, stone huts huddled like beggars against the cold wind. Children peeked from doorways, wide-eyed. An old man sat against a wall, stringing prayer beads through weathered fingers. Hayes motioned for Morales and Devers to sweep. Reb hung back, rifle slung, watching the rooftops. Always rooftops. A woman approached, wrapped in a gray shawl. She spoke in broken English, soldiers, you go back. Bad men here. You know safe. Hayes asked, where? Where are they? The woman shook her head fiercely. No say. They kill me. Reb stepped closer, lowering her voice. We can protect you. The woman's eyes flicked to her, sharp, almost accusing. You cannot protect yourself. Before Reb could answer, a boy ran from an alley, clutching something metal. Reb's instincts flared, too fast, too tight in his grip. She raised her rifle. Wait. Morales shouted, grabbing the boy. The object clattered to the ground. A cooking pot lid. The boy's eyes brimmed with terror. Reb's hands shook. For a moment, she'd seen a weapon. For a moment, she was one breath away from killing a child. The old man muttered something in Pashto, eyes fixed on her. Reb didn't know the words, but the meaning was clear. Death walks where you walk. Ambush in the pass. They left the village before noon, climbing into a narrow pass. The cliffs loomed high, cutting the sky into a thin strip. Reb hated it instantly. This is a kill funnel, she muttered. Hayes grimaced. Keep moving. We don't have time to circle. The first explosion ripped through the column like thunder. An IED buried in rock. Dust, screams, shrapnel shredding packs. Ambush. Gunfire poured from both ridgelines. Figures popped from crevices, rifles spitting down. The squad dove for what little cover the pass offered, flat stone and scattered boulders. Reb rolled, scoped up. A shooter on the left ridge, down. Another on the right, down. But for every one she dropped, two more appeared. Devers shouted, we're boxed. Hayes' voice was iron, hold your ground. Push left, push left. Bullets rained like hail. Reb's world narrowed again, scope, breath, squeeze. She moved like a machine, but her gut twisted. This wasn't malicious spray fire. These were controlled, disciplined shots. And then she saw him. On the far ridge, black-clad, rifle steady, posture perfect. Even from 500 meters, she knew. Viper. Their eyes met through glass and distance. He didn't fire immediately. He was studying her. Testing her. She whispered, there you are. Duel in the pass. She adjusted, but he moved with uncanny speed, rolling, firing. A round sparked off stone inches from her face. She shifted, fired back. He vanished. The firefight around her blurred into chaos, grenades, shouts, blood, but Reb's world shrank to one duel. She tracked every shadow, every flicker of movement. Crack. His shot clipped Devers' shoulder, spinning him into the dust. No. Reb shouted, shifting her aim. She caught a glimpse of Viper's scope flashing. She fired. Too late. He was gone again. Morales dragged Devers behind a boulder, blood soaking his sleeve. His hit bad. Reb's heart hammered. She wanted to rush, to help, but she couldn't. If she looked away from that ridge, even for a second, more would fall. She breathed. Waited. Let instinct settle. He wanted her rattled. He wanted her angry. Then, there. A sliver of movement against shadow. Too perfect. Too deliberate. A feint. She didn't fire. She waited. A second flicker, lower this time, real. She squeezed. The ridge spat dust as Viper rolled, his shoulder jerking back. Hit, but not killed. He melted into shadow, vanishing. The ambushers faltered as their leader fell back. Hayes roared, "Push now." The squad surged, clearing the ridge with grenades and raw fury. Insurgents scattered, some cut down, others fleeing. When the smoke cleared, bodies littered stone. But Viper was gone. Aftermath. They patched Devers as best they could, hauling him onto a stretcher. His face was pale, teeth gritted. "I'm fine," he lied through blood. Reb sat apart, rifle across her knees, staring at the ridge where Viper had vanished. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage. She had him. She had him. And still he lived. Hayes crouched beside her. "You saved lives today." She shook her head. "Not enough. He's still out there." Hayes studied her, then said quietly, "Maybe that's the point. He wants you chasing him. Wants you obsessed." She met his eyes. "Then he's going to regret it." Night in the mountains. They bivouacked in a cave, firelight dancing across tired faces. Morales cleaned his weapon in silence. Devers drifted in and out, muttering nonsense through fever. Reb sat at the cave mouth, watching the stars burn cold above the peaks. Her rifle lay across her lap, her hand resting on it like a heartbeat. She thought of the village boy, the pot lid clattering to the ground. Thought of Viper's eyes through the scope. Thought of how her squad looked to her now, not just as a soldier, but as their shield. She whispered to the night, low and bitter, "Your move." And somewhere in those mountains, she knew, Viper was whispering the same words. Rain hammered down over the desert valley as thunder cracked in the distance. Lightning illuminated jagged ridges that framed the horizon, casting fleeting shadows across the jagged terrain. The storm was a cruel twist of fate. Visibility was fractured, wind gusts tore unpredictably across the canyon, and electronic sensors flickered under the electrical interference. And yet, this was exactly when the strike was coming. Captain Elena Ramirez lay prone on a rocky ridge, her cheek pressed against the cold stock of her XM-2010 sniper rifle. Beside her, Staff Sergeant Malik checked wind meters, barometers, and a tangle of advanced weather read instruments, his voice taut with concentration. Wind shear fluctuating between 12 and 19 knots. Crosswinds rolling counterclockwise. Pressure dropping. Humidity's off the charts. Ramirez didn't blink. She only whispered, "Then we'll make it count." She had been called crazy. Reckless. Even arrogant. No sniper in history had ever landed a shot this far, 15 miles across fractured ridges, through hostile weather, with less than 5 seconds before the convoy vanished behind reinforced cover. But Ramirez didn't care about records. She cared about what sat inside that convoy, Khalid al-Mosri, the ghost who had orchestrated ambushes that killed more Americans than anyone else in the region. If he escaped tonight, he'd reignite chaos across 2 borders. And Ramirez wasn't going to let that happen. The setup. The ridge line was their only chance. Delta Team had crawled for hours under punishing rain, dragging equipment through mud that sucked at their boots like quicksand. They had one window, a temporary choke point between 2 cliffs where the convoy's vehicles had to slow down. Ramirez's spotter, Malik, adjusted the scope's thermal overlay. Convoy's 15 clicks out. Still moving fast. "You've got about 90 seconds until they hit that choke." Another voice crackled in her earpiece. It was Lieutenant Vaughn, commanding Delta's support element. "Ramirez, I still don't like this. A 15-mile shot is suicide. We should be moving in closer, setting demo charges." She exhaled slowly, ignoring the skepticism. "Negative. Too much risk of compromise. They've got drones in the sky, infrared sweepers. If we light up, we're done. This is the only way." "Damn it," Vaughn muttered. "Fine. Your call. But if this goes sideways..." "Then it's my name on the line," Ramirez finished. The weight of decision. She remembered their faces, her own platoon, the ones who had laughed when she first suggested extreme-range sniping tactics. A fairy tale, one sergeant had scoffed. Even some instructors told her flat out, "It can't be done." But Ramirez wasn't here for doubters. She was here for the ghosts of comrades she'd lost. Private Cole, ambushed en route Echo. Sergeant Hayes, blown apart by an IED planted by al-Mosri's network. Even her brother Javier, who had been deployed 2 years before her and never came home. Every ounce of that pain now funneled into the crosshairs of her scope. Calculations under fire. Time to choke, 60 seconds, Malik whispered. His hands flew across his tablet, feeding weather data into the ballistic computer. Ramirez adjusted the dial on her scope, elevation set absurdly high, nearly vertical compared to normal engagements. She wasn't shooting at the convoy. She was lobbing around through the heavens, counting on physics, math, and a steady heart. Barrel temp, she asked. Stable. Chamber clean. Malik hesitated. Elena, once you pull that trigger, it's 5 full seconds of flight time. If the target shifts course even slightly, then it's over, she said flatly. That's war. The moment of truth. Through the storm, faint heat signatures emerged. A line of vehicles, 3 technicals bristling with heavy guns, followed by an armored transport in the center. That was the prize. Her heartbeat slowed. Every sniper learned to sink their shot between breaths, between heartbeats, in the stillness where the body became a machine. 20 seconds. The wind screamed across the ridge, tearing at her poncho. Lightning cracked, and for an instant, the convoy glowed in her scope. She didn't see machines. She saw the end of a war. 10 seconds. Ramirez whispered into her MIC, all units, hold fire. This one's mine. 5 seconds. Malik's voice was steel. Just 3 clicks left. 2 mils high. Compensate for gust front. Her finger tightened on the trigger. And then, she fired. Flight of the impossible. The recoil thudded into her shoulder, muffled by adrenaline. The round screamed upward into the storm, vanishing into the black. 5 seconds stretched into eternity. Her mind calculated the bullet's journey, climbing, arcing, descending across miles of turbulent air. The storm fought to drag it off course, but physics was a stubborn ally. 1 second. 2. 3. The convoy rolled forward, still oblivious. 4. 5. A flash erupted inside the armored transport. The entire vehicle lurched sideways as its engine block disintegrated. Flames burst from its hood, licking skyward in defiance of the rain. The column screeched to a halt. Fighters leapt from the technicals, panicked and shouting. Malik's voice cracked with disbelief. Direct hit. Engine block penetration. Sweet Mother of God, Elena, you did it. Chaos in the valley. But the fight wasn't over. The other vehicles wheeled around, turrets swiveling, spraying wildfire into the cliffs. They had no idea where the shot came from, but blind panic was still deadly. Delta, move. Vaughn shouted over comms. Suppress those gunners before they pin us. Automatic rifles barked from Ramirez's flanks as Delta lit up the valley, picking off exposed hostiles. RPGs whooshed skyward, exploding harmlessly against rock. Ramirez herself cycled the bolt and fired again, shorter shots now, barely a mile each, which almost felt easy after the miracle she just pulled. One insurgent dropped, then another. But through it all, her focus was on the burning transport. The rear hatch burst open. And through smoke and flame, a figure staggered out. Khalid al-Mosri. The face of the ghost. Ramirez zoomed her scope. Even through the storm, she saw the lines of his face, gaunt, bearded, eyes burning with fury. He clutched a radio, barking orders, dragging himself toward the cover of a ravine. Malik hissed. Target confirmed. That's him. Ramirez steadied her rifle. This was the moment her entire war had led to. But then, an RPG slammed into the ridge. Rock shattered. The blast flung Malik sideways, tearing his headset away. Ramirez gasped. Malik. He groaned, bleeding but alive. I'm fine. Take the shot, don't worry about me. Her hands shook as she realigned her scope. But al-Mosri was moving fast, vanishing into shadow. One breath. One chance. She squeezed. Silence after the storm. The round streaked through the storm, barely visible in the lightning flashes. Al-Mosri stumbled mid-stride. His radio dropped. For a heartbeat, he stood frozen. Then he collapsed into the mud. Delta's cheers erupted over comms, raw and triumphant. Vaughn's voice roared, target neutralized. Repeat, HVT neutralized. Ramirez, you just made history. But Ramirez didn't cheer. She lowered her rifle, rain streaming down her face, mixing with tears she hadn't realized were falling. Extraction. The firefight dwindled as the surviving insurgents scattered into the storm. Delta regrouped, hauling Malik onto a stretcher. Helicopters thundered in, blades chopping the rain into mist. As they lifted off, Ramirez sat silent, staring out at the burning convoy below. "You okay, Captain?" Vaughn asked, settling beside her. She nodded faintly. "Yeah. It's over." Vaughn chuckled darkly. "Over? You just painted a giant target on yourself. Half the world's gonna know your name now." Ramirez didn't answer. She just tightened her grip on her rifle. Epilogue: The Mystery. 3 weeks later, back at base, Ramirez walked the halls like a ghost. Medals were being prepared. News outlets whispered about an unconfirmed record-breaking sniper shot. But the part that haunted her wasn't the fame. It was what she saw in Al-Mosri's eyes during that last second, the flicker of recognition. Almost as if he'd been expecting her. One night, Malik limped into her quarters with a sealed folder. He looked uneasy. "This came down from Intel. Debrief material. Thought you should see it." Ramirez opened the folder. Her blood ran cold. Inside were satellite photos, grainy, but clear. Taken minutes after the firefight. Showing a body being dragged from the battlefield. And the face wasn't Al-Mosri's. Closing line. Captain Elena Ramirez stared at the photos, heart pounding, as realization sank in. She hadn't killed the ghost. She'd only killed his double. And the real war was just beginning. The end.